Hi, everyone. My name is Tao Yeager. I'm a product manager here at GitLab for continuous integration. And today I'd like to highlight a few features that we'll be working on in release 13.10. The first feature that I want to talk about is adding a project setting to allow merges before pipelines complete. Now, when would you ever need that? Basically, that's how the current behavior is for our product, but you don't have the ability to disable this. So currently we have the ability to merge immediately, and this is very valuable when you need to urgently merge a high priority merge request, even if you have merge results pipelines enabled or merge trains enabled as well. The merge immediately risk, though, that comes with this capability is bypassing all the safeguards that are the reasons merge results pipeline and merge trains was enabled to provide. So what are we going to do to solve for this? We're introducing a new project setting that is enabled by default. And the reason it's enabled by default is it allows the current behavior of letting you merge your MR using the merge immediately button, a /merge quick action, or an API call. Nothing will change with the introduction of this new project setting. What has changed is you now have it as a configuration to unselect and disable this capability. And in doing that, you would hide the merge immediately button and then also disallow the other two methods for merging immediately. In doing so, you can selectively safeguard specific projects from not having this feature enabled to merge immediately and requiring that your merge results pipeline or merge trains, if enabled, it runs as usual so that you can prevent any breaking changes being introduced to your target branch. Moving on to the next feature that I want to highlight for 13.10 is the ability to merge your merge request if your pipeline is empty, even if you have pipeline must succeed enabled. The problem we're trying to solve here is having a project setting of pipeline must succeed enabled. If you have a scenario where no pipeline runs, you would never be able to merge that MR. And an example I can think of is if all the jobs in your CI configs are set up in a way that the condition is the jobs would only run if there were changes in the MR to directory A. Then if you have an MR that only makes changes to directory B, but you have pipelines must succeed, you would never be able to merge that MR because the CI configs would evaluate to all jobs being skipped because there's no changes to directory A. However, with all jobs being skipped, it's an empty pipeline, and the absence of this pipeline running would never satisfy the condition that pipelines must succeed. And so therefore that MR to make changes to directory B can never be merged based on how our settings is configured today. So what we are going to introduce in this new feature, it'll be a two-part implementation. The first iteration in 13.10 is to allow you to introduce a new project setting that looks for the presence of a pipeline, and you have the ability to enable or disable this through API as the first implementation. And in doing so, it would check to see if there was an MR that's being prepared, and ultimately, even with an empty pipeline, you would still be able to merge an MR whose changes resolve the pipeline to being no jobs running, being triggered. And in the following milestone, we'll add the actual UI setting to effectuate this same capability that we're providing first through an API call. A third feature that we'll be working on that we've mentioned in the past, and it's again scheduled for 13.10, is to give you the ability to bulk delete artifacts through an API. Currently, the only way to delete artifacts is individually, and we have an API to support that. But there is no method to do a bulk delete of artifacts. And so in providing this, we hope it makes it useful for when you need to do a big cleanup and you want to, in one go, without using a script, to automatically remove a bulk set of API based on attributes that you defined. And finally, I want to touch on a particular priority 2 severity 1 bug that we'll be working to resolve. This one is about the improper handling of variable priority when variables are passed between a parent-child pipeline. And the example that's given here, I won't run through it in detail. You can read it for yourself. But what it turns out is the parent pipeline correctly evaluates variable priority. In this case, it looks at this globally defined variable in the YAML, and it knows, and that would be priority. Looking at the documentation here, that would be the priority number 7. But in that example, it is letting the scheduled pipeline variable override a lower priority variable defined in the YAML. But when it comes to the child, somehow the child pipeline is doing the opposite. It's allowing this variable defined in the YAML to override a scheduled variable, which obviously in this documentation takes out of order the precedence of variables. Variables listed at top being higher precedence and should override anything below. So hopefully fixing this would make using variables much more predictable and useful in the parent-child pipeline scenario. Well, those are 3 of the key features that we'll be working on in 13.10, and obviously a severity 1 bug that we want to resolve as well. If you have any, I'll link to these issues at the bottom of this video. If you have any questions, feel free to ping me in the issues themselves, and we're happy to engage there. Thank you for listening.